This episode of the Restoration Today podcast is brought to you by SuperTech U. Did you know 85% of financial success comes from soft skills abilities and only 15% from our technical abilities? SuperTech U was created by longtime restoration pros Eric Sprague and Larry Wilberton. Their daily 3 to 5 minute videos train your entire company on the soft skills they need to make your business thrive. Plus, your entire team earns IICRC CEC credits, all for about the cost of one tank of gas. To sign up, head to supertechu.com/CRMag to get your discount for being a loyal listener to the Restoration Today podcast. That's supertechu.com/CRMag to sign up. Hello there. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Today, I'm excited to be joined by a friend in the industry. I'm joined by Jon Vogt. He is the COO of Mammoth Restoration. They are out of Pennsylvania, based in State College. But Jon has spent the last month or so down in Florida, helping with Hurricane Ian response efforts. Mammoth is a large restoration company. Those of you who listen to Restoration Today, you've probably heard Mike Bennett, the owner of Mammoth. You've probably heard him on the podcast previously, and they are great at mobilizing and responding to cat zones just like this. So I wanted to bring Jon on and kind of get his perspective on what's happening in Florida, how other restorers can help, some of the challenges that are being faced, all that stuff. So Jon, thank you very much for joining me. It's nice to see your face.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start by just kind of give us a glimpse at what you are seeing in Florida now, since I know you're back home for a few days, but like, what are conditions like in Florida now in the areas that were hardest hit, like Fort Myers, Sanibel, that kind of area?
Yeah, great question. When I first went down, the only way we could get over to Sanibel was on a boat.
Yep.
And then we actually had to wade in the water to get to the island to check out some of the jobs that we already had under contract. So that's a first for me. Lot of interesting challenges just getting around. So the bridge to Sanibel completely knocked out. We've had to take barges to and from our job sites. Mobilization has been quite interesting. When we started working in Fort Myers, it really hit me. Anything that anybody has seen on the news, it does not even, I mean, you can't even imagine until you see it with your own eyes. Sand, essentially like large snowbanks all over the place. Just payloaders making sure that the roads are clear. Every road there too that was a 2-lane is now a 1-lane, and you've got all kinds of utility workers working on power infrastructure. So it's not easy to get around. And when we were pulling our semis in, we were just crossing our fingers saying, okay, we think we can get it in here. Inches on each side, and then strategically located them near our job site. So it's been a little bit of a challenge. Things are starting to open up more now than week one, if you will. And I think it's only going to get better and better. One of the other challenges on Fort Myers Beach, Monday and Tuesday, contractors have not been able to work. And then Wednesday through Sunday, there's limited hours. So it's 9 to 5, where we're typically used to working 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, and even 2 shifts at times. So this has presented a little bit of a challenge, and it's a slower go than we would normally like to see. I do believe that's going to change in the near future, though. I think we're going to be able to get on and do Monday and Tuesdays and have extended hours. So
what were the reasons for that? Was that like an emergency? It must be an emergency management decision, but what were the reasons behind that kind of decision?
Yeah. So what ended up happening was they said in order to restore power and the necessary infrastructure, water, gas, utilities, they wanted to make sure that there wasn't additional traffic on the roads. So they wanted to really focus their efforts getting temporary power poles up, bringing additional transformers in, setting transformers. So when power is up, we would then be able to energize the building. So they just needed that time, and still do need that time, to make sure that the infrastructure is set and ready to go.
What did the days coming up to Hurricane Ian making landfall look like? Like, were you able, I'm sure that your team was watching and preparing. Do you already have these semis loaded for when this happens? Do you have strategic partners that help you make sure that you have the right equipment and supplies? What does that look like?
So you nailed it when you said strategic partners. We've aligned ourselves with a lot of great companies, a lot of subcontractors around the country. Of course, we were glued to the Weather Channel. Mike Bevilacqua knows a renowned meteorologist, Joe Bastardi, so he was giving us updates as well. So you asked the question, were we ready? Were we loaded? Absolutely. So we had our water trailers loaded. We also have separate consumable trailers, and then our box trucks and fleet ready to go. Now, this is a separate division of Mammoth, so everything is separated out so we don't mix equipment, and everything is uniform and consistent. So when you're on our job sites, everything is going to look uniform and the same. It's not a hodgepodge of different equipment. So we've got guys that clean it, guys and gals that clean the stuff, make sure it's operational before it gets transported, and then equipment specialists once we get on our job sites.
So how much of your man and woman power is from like Pennsylvania and the Mammoth team, and how much have you brought in from other areas of the country or Florida or wherever that may be?
Tough to answer off the bat because it's fluid with the job sites. So for instance, on one job site now we have 75 individuals, and two of our other sites we've got 60 on each site, and we've got two more projects starting next week. We'll have another 35 to 45 people there. Now from Pennsylvania, Ohio, and New Jersey, we have actually, and Montana, we have project management teammates that have come down to help. So lead technicians, project managers, project coordinators, and of course our central support team in State College, Pennsylvania. They do all of our administrative support, make sure that I would say holding down the fort, if you will, when everybody else is in the field, and they're doing a fantastic job.
How did you land the jobs that you have been doing? It sounds like you're doing large commercial losses, which makes sense. So how did you land those jobs in the first place? Did you have relationships in place and you knew that you were going to serve these customers immediately, or were you selling once you were there, or both?
A combination. There's a gentleman, part of the core network, Ken Brown from Arrett, who I've talked with quite a bit, and he needed a hand, and we said, you know what, why don't we team up, divide and conquer? So that's just what we did. Then we ended up becoming friends with a contractor, Marzukos Construction and Coating, and we're working on projects with them as well. So they're doing the repair side of it. We're getting everything ready, bringing it up to that point where they can jump in and do what they need to do. Very large organization, very well known in the communities. So by teaming up with these individuals, it's great business for everybody while we're still helping the customers. The other big benefit that we've had, subcontractors for shrink wrapping roofs that we're on, different board up companies that we're utilizing, awesome power companies that are bringing generators in on all of our jobs, anything from 1 megs to 2 megs down to 175 kW. So there's a lot of resources that are helping support us, which allows us to support the customers.
Has being interconnected within the industry, you mentioned core, so like have relationships through core and maybe through RA, has that been helpful through this process to make sure you have the right partners in place?
100%. There's a lot of people that have been in the industry for a long time, and as many people as there are, it's still a tight group of people. I've been fortunate enough to make friendships and good partnerships over the years since I started doing this, and a lot of Mammoth team members are the same exact way. So we as a team are really moving forward and making sure that we are communicating clearly with those we want to align ourselves with. And if you have that alignment and share values, it makes things much easier. And then it increases the trust factor not only between the companies, but between us and the end user being the customer.
Did you do any prep work, or do you have somebody on the Mammoth team that understands what it's like to work in different, like when you're going from Florida to Florida from Pennsylvania, and like some of the rules, regulations, laws, those kinds of things are different in Florida than they are elsewhere, even though some were relieved because of emergency stuff. But do you have people who are staying on top of those kinds of things as well, so you don't go into a different state and get in trouble?
Yeah, so we do. Our CFO is very involved with this, and he also has some individuals that he works with very, very closely. So that's all part of the pre-planning, knowing, okay, we're going to be in North Carolina, or we're going to be in Florida, or even New Jersey and New York. So there's different guidelines, if you will, all over the place. And then it could be state, but then you go down the road and you're in a different township, and the township might have different regulations. So any place we do go, one of the first things we do is go to the township or the permitting office and make sure we know who to talk to, what we're doing, and making sure that we're doing things the right way, staying above board.
It's wise. Don't want to end up with bad things later, lawsuits later.
Exactly.
Okay, so I want to talk about the logistics and have you kind of share what it's looking like. It sounds like you have several hundred people that are working there. So are you finding hotels? Do you have condos? Where are people staying? How are you getting them fed, water, all of those things that sometimes people don't think about in a CAT, but it can be difficult to get all that taken care of, fuel, all those logistics.
Yep. So lodging at first was incredibly difficult. All of our team that initially went down, we were fortunate enough to secure some Airbnbs. I think we got 4 right off the bat, and each one of them had, I don't know, 4 bedrooms, right?
Yeah.
So that housed our management team. And then hotels were tough because they were 2 hours away from any job site.
Yeah.
So all of our guys and gals are driving 2 hours, working a full 10 to 12, and then going back another 2 hours. So very, very long days. As power started coming back up in certain areas, we're able to get people closer and closer and closer. You mentioned food. Of course, we provide meals for all of the team. And Jen Meshach, who works out of our central support team in Pleasant Gap, we said, Jen, you know what, find food. And she's like, I'm on it. I'm gonna figure this out. So when you're trying to get meals for 100 people or 200 people, it takes pre-planning. So before the storm even happened, Jen was already on the phone with different vendors, and there are vendors that provide food for catastrophic events as well. So we were making those phone calls ahead of time, and then of course one thing leads to another, and maybe one vendor said, you know what, I can only do Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays because I've got to take care of other customers. I know this guy and gal over here who can take Tuesday and Thursdays. So that's how we've kind of worked it. And as more and more jobs come in and more labor is needed, we're just going to keep continuously trying to find lodging. A lot of companies and a lot of labor companies have hotels booked through December of this year already. Just saying, okay, hey, we need to make sure that we have lodging because there is a lot of work that still needs to be done down there.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like any of this is going to be done like anytime soon. Certainly not quickly. It's going to take a long time to rebuild. What about fuel? Did you have enough fuel for like your generators and large deskins, the things that you had on job sites? Were you trucking that in? How was that working?
Yep. So that's all tankered in. One of the companies that we utilize staged at the Fort Myers airport had plenty of fuel. And believe it or not, a Pennsylvania-based company had reserved fuel about 3 hours outside of Fort Myers and had multiple tankers and fuel reserves. So we were able to, again, leverage our partnerships to make sure that we're able to fuel our generators.
What does your day-to-day as the COO look like? And you have all these jobs, all these people, all the logistics. What does your day-to-day look like?
Uh, I think anybody's day to day is uh, minute to minute right
Yeah.
now. It's one of those things where you could be having a conversation and then have to take a phone call, and then that phone call is, of course, very important. So you're going to have to push off your next meeting. So I'll say minute to minute, and the team as a whole is really doing the same exact thing, and we're pivoting. So a lot of companies like to work black and white. Right now, during a storm, some of us have to operate in that gray area. And the good news is our central support team, some of our other project managers that aren't at, down in Florida, can really help keep us grounded and make sure that our processes are being followed and that the home front is taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the most surprising things that you've seen so far? Or yeah, we'll start there.
So some alligators and some snakes, right? So
Okay.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. A car about 100 yards off of Sanibel Island in the water. So that was definitely incredibly unique. You've seen on
Wow.
the news that boats are piled on
Yeah.
top of one another. It's difficult, but one of the coolest things that I've seen is outpour and support from the community. There's lots of stations set up where you've got food, you've got water. Some individuals have brought in temporary toilets that have not even been affected, but the agencies that they work for are there simply for support. And some individuals that aren't even associated with an agency, it could be you and I out there with cases of water and energy bars. So pretty cool stuff.
How have you seen what's going on? I know that you're doing commercial losses. Do you have any kind of gauge of what's going on residentially in the neighborhoods and contractors working to rebuild those areas?
So initially, when I first started walking around and then finally being able to drive around, the residential structures were, I mean, it was devastating. A
Yeah.
lot of them weren't they weren't there. I mean, they were gone. They were blown away. So the majority of the initial work for us was commercial, because
Yeah.
all of those other residential customers in that area, there was so much devastation that the buildings will be raised, right? So they'll be taken down, and unfortunately people are going to have to start over. And the other thing that some people are challenged with right now, uh, two different coverages between flood
Yeah.
and wind. All right. So
Oh,
you're not only dealing with just one insurance company. You've got the insurance companies, the adjusters, you've got the brokers involved very, very heavily now. Then you've got the building consultants. So any one job, you're talking to many more people than you normally would on any other job.
all right. With that many people, how are you keeping yourself organized? How does the Mammoth team keep themselves organized? I'm sure you guys have different software that you use and technology that's helping you with this, some insure tech probably. So how are you staying on top of all this, keeping your files straight, your documentation, all that?
Yeah, so of course, every job has its own job file with
Oh,
separate subfolders. Tim Haas, our COO, he actually has been doing a very, very awesome job helping me out by placing things in the files and doing what needs to be done, making sure that the central support team is working in unison to help us all out. Because if one document gets put in the wrong file and any one of us are trying to look for it, it just it's a big headache.
mm-hmm. What kind of paperwork do you require up front when you start a job?
Okay, so we've got a service contract, T&M, our rate sheets, all of that documentation is filled out. That's done electronically. Customer gets a copy, we get a copy, and then from there, there's additional forms, such as a content disposal form, just to make sure that, hey, if we're touching something or we're moving something, we have authorization to do it. If it's not on the scope, we're not doing it. We're making sure that everything is being done that the customer wants, and then also giving our professional recommendations to say, hey, I know that you don't want this done, but here's why we want it done, or you should want it done.
How big is the scope of work on these commercial properties? Is it mostly water damage? Is it wind? I know you said that there's both. I mean, and like how much of these structures is damaged on average? Is it just the bottom couple floors? Are we talking like the whole thing's messed up? It probably depends, but kind of curious what you're seeing. Depends. Sorry.
Dynamic. So I think I can answer it two ways. There's a lot of flood damage specifically for larger high rises. For instance, in Naples, did not have as much wind, but more storm surge. But that knocked the power out. So we had to do humidity control for the high rises. So then you actually had both. And over in Sanibel right now, it's a lot of both. If I had to guess, the majority, probably 30% flood and the balance wind on a lot of the projects that we're working on right now.
Okay, talk a little bit more about Sanibel. I remember seeing the picture when the bridge reopened, which they got that bridge temporarily fixed way faster than I honestly thought humanly possible. I've driven over that bridge multiple times, and so bravo to Florida for getting it fixed that quickly. Were you guys in that chain trying to wait to get over? I know it looked like a lot of power trucks and stuff, but that was crazy.
So we were in the chain, and we kind of did this strategically because we still had the barges going back and forth, and we knew we needed to get certain equipment in a certain amount of time. So some of that equipment, we said, you know what, we don't need that until the next day. So unfortunately, those fine individuals driving the vehicles got to be in the line, where a lot of our other individual teammates were back and forth on the barge. We were back and forth about 3 times a day just to get our labor and equipment and consumables over, just to get everything started.
How do you even find a barge? Like, I don't even know the logistics of finding a barge to rent out in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, jokingly, that I did, I was on my phone, terrible reception. I was like, I'm gonna Google it. Where do I find a barge? Fortunately, some of the relationships that we have down there, we're big into fishing, and they know captains, and a lot of these captains have specific licenses to operate boats of certain sizes. So it's a pretty good connection there. A lot of these guys are connected with one another, and we're able to say, yeah, we can definitely help. Plus, it's a great opportunity for them in their industry because they're not used to barging back and forth the amount that they did, and will continue to do.
Yeah. So some of the pictures I've seen, I believe you're not the first person that I've heard say that what you're seeing on TV is nothing compared to what it actually really looks like. And the biggest thing I've heard is the vegetation is just gone. So I'm kind of curious what does Sanibel look like now for maybe people who have been there and are familiar with Sanibel? You cross the bridge and you get to the main area, you can go right or left. What does the vegetation look like now? What does town look like?
Yeah. When you look down a street, it just looks like everything has been toppled over. And I know there's not tumbleweeds in Florida, but it looks like there are right now. You've got down trees across entranceways. The teams that are out there right now from the city and from Sanibel, I mean, they're working tirelessly as well, getting that stuff off so it can be cleared away. The main mode of transportation originally were side-by-sides that you could just have people hop in and navigate around. So it's been a challenge. And when you see all that vegetation, you just think to yourself, how long is it going to take for this stuff to grow back?
Yes.
And I mean, I can't even, I mean, you have stuff there that's been there for 100 years that's now gone.
Yeah.
You don't get that back.
No, it's gonna take a while. Okay, so that walks actually well into my next question. What is Mammoth's plan from here? Do you have goals of when you're wrapping up down there? Are you there as long as is needed? What does that look like?
Um, right now we're taking it job by job.
Mm-hmm.
We want to work with customers that want to work with us. We're not out there to simply just sign work. We're there to help people get back into their facilities. One thing that I have noticed, the companies that are cleaning up quicker than others are getting power faster. So specifically in Sanibel, when we mobilized to one specific site, we just started cleaning up. Optics was a big thing for the power companies, and they came right in and said, you know what, it looks like you guys are moving along. Do you mind if we bring a transformer in on X day? And so we're like, wow, this is fantastic. And then that end user, that customer, will tell one of their other facility manager friends, hey, here's what Mammoth has been doing. So between the relationships that we formed and just the overall work that we're producing, it leads to more work. But getting back to your question, how long are we going to be there? I can't answer it because, again, we're going to take it job by job, and when it makes sense to leave, that's what we're going to do.
Okay, so what advice would you give restoration companies for the next time a cat hits? I know mobilizing is always a big topic, right? Do you chase? Do you not chase? Do you go? Do you not go? And there's lots of advice surrounding that and lots of different viewpoints. So what advice would you give companies that are like, I don't know, it looks like, we know what we're doing and it looks like these guys are making some money and doing good things. What advice would you give before a company mobilizes?
Patience, and make sure before you leave, where the storm is most likely going to hit. Specifically with Ian, it moved around a little bit, and then we wanted to make sure that we were mobilized roughly about 3 hours outside of where we knew it was going to hit. So the other advice I have is be loaded, be ready to go, but most importantly, just be safe. Don't simply do it to chase the dollar. Do it to help other people, and the dollar is a byproduct of that.
Yes. Okay, Jon, well, anything else you want to add? Anything else we didn't talk about? This was a wealth of knowledge. Thank you.
No, it's a pleasure talking with you. And I know you're doing a lot of great things, and we're all having fun in the industry. So, look forward to talking to you again.
Awesome. Thanks, Jon. Have a good one.
For more Restoration Today, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, or find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts.